Hello, my friends. We are going to be doing an IG Live room, which hopefully I know how to do, but we're going to be starting here soon. So I'm going to be requesting that 3 of our guests join us. So bear with me if there's any technical difficulties. We are in this together. So hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Kreisky, your host for today, also elementary art teacher in Wisconsin, and we are going to get everybody in the chat here. I know Nick Hahn is going to be just a few minutes late because, as you know, school happens, life happens, so she'll be in here in just a second. And our other guests will be Jonathan Jovich and Lindsay McGinnis, who's going to be telling us all about the new YouTube series that we have to help us with those needs of our youngest artists. So today we are talking all about the support we need for our kindergarten kiddos. So specifically kindergarten, but of course any of that can be taken up into our 1st or 2nd grade friends as well. So please drop any questions into the chat if you have something specific about what we're talking about, or if you're just wondering, I don't know how to manage, my kids lining up properly or whatever it might be, and see if we have any tips to help you out. So I'm going to get our guests in here and hope that we can get everybody going. Technology at its finest. This is the first room I've done, y'all, so I hope that it will just magically appear. Jonathan, Nick, we just need Lindsay. That was really exciting, though.
It is.
I know. I was like, this is happening. Okay, I'll check on Lindsay, but Jonathan and Nick, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm so happy you are here. Jonathan, can you introduce yourself for our guests while I get Lindsay in here?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Jonathan Jovich. I'm an elementary art educator in Ohio, outside of Columbus, Ohio. And I'm also the host of our limited series podcast, The Art of SEL. Limited, full of information, but tiny. And then I'm also a writer for the Art of Education University as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. That is amazing. And oh, yay! And we got Lindsay. Perfect. Hello, Lindsay. We were just introducing everybody. We're so happy you're here. And I'm super psyched about all these amazing people in one place. So Jonathan was telling us about how he hosts the SEL, the short-term SEL, what do we call it? Mini-series situation. Yeah, that's good. For how we can use SEL in our art room and in our classrooms. And we're just going to move on to Nick. And Nick, tell us about you and what your role is and what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm an elementary art educator right now. I've done K-12 at some point in my life, and I'm the host of Everyday Art Room. I am working here in Rogers, Minnesota, K-5 school right now, and that's me, 20 years. Here we go, art educator.
Awesome. Okay, and Lindsay, I know you just popped in here, so can you tell everybody about what your role is at AOEU, what you did when you were previously a teacher, and just tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Lindsay, and I am the media content manager at the Art of Ed, and that means that I work with the magazines. I get to work with writers like Jonathan, and Nick has written some articles too, and Sarah used to be a writer as well.
Yep.
And I also get to work with the YouTube channel, which is up and coming. So that's exciting as well. But before this, I was an art teacher. I think I'm the only one in this room that has not taught elementary school, aside from student teaching. So it's been a long time since I've taught kindergartners, but I'm here to share about the YouTube series and some of the tips from that regarding kindergarten. And my daughter just finished kindergarten too, and so that's pretty recent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're going to speak to a lot of what's happening on the mini series that we did on YouTube about addressing those needs of our youngest artists. But really quick, I just wanted to touch base with Jonathan and Nick too about what other areas we're creating content to kind of hit this home, because us as a team discussed this summer about how we're feeling like this is a big need for us. We're already feeling a lot of stress as teachers. We're feeling like this is hard again. And we'll just come out and say it. It's still hard, maybe even more difficult, right? So we wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about how we can slowly chisel away at the parts that are causing us the most grief, the things that are being the most challenging for us. And those youngest learners tended to be where we were noticing those high needs. So as a team, we discussed, okay, well, we got to create some content, create some conversations to make sure that this doesn't become a negative thing about our youngest artists, but instead, how can we support them, right? So I would love to hear from Jonathan just a little quick background about like specifically how we can use that podcast with our youngest artists. Nick, tell us just a little bit about that episode you did about your kind of connecting with those youngest artists. And then Lindsay, just give us like a quick preview about what we can find on the YouTube channel. So Jonathan, I'll have you quick start.
Yeah. Okay. So in my podcast, The Art of SEL, I talk to art educators from all levels, as well as authors, illustrators, counselors, equity specialists. So all levels about how we can very practically bring SEL or social emotional learning into our classrooms. And when we think about our kindergartners, I mean, they're learning so much. They're learning what it means to come to school. They're learning what it means to become friends. They're learning about relationships, about other people that may look or think differently than them. Like all of that's happening in these little tiny, amazing humans. And so throughout the podcast, we spend a lot of time exploring all levels. But what it did is it also prompted me creating an article for The Art of SEL on specifically kindergarten lessons that tie to the competencies of SEL. So you could go search that. But yeah, using like talking about the elements of art and how they link to the competencies of social emotional learning, how we learn about ourselves and about other people.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, we learn that and we talk about it and we do it and we model it for our students, but especially those super young artists that are kind of getting a different intro into a learning experience and a learning environment. It just feels a little bit different, right? We can't connect in the way where we give a side hug or we give a little wink or a side smile to our kiddos. It just doesn't feel the same. So that emotional connection it needs to be kind of encouraged in a different way. So I'm loving, I mean, yeah. I've listened to all the podcasts and I'm going to listen to them again and like take notes this time, Jonathan, because they are chef's kiss. So good. Yes. Okay, speaking of podcasts, tell me.
Oh, no, I was going to say a lot of it. It's not me. Like, if you listen to the podcast, I'm listening and learning along with these amazing educators.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing to note is we're all learning. That's why we're here tonight. We're here to share ideas and then to learn from one another as well.
Yeah, completely. And also hopefully just to create a community and support each other. Because like I said at the beginning, we're all feeling that continued stress, that continued kind of pressure to like elevate what we're doing, or we've already done this a year, so it's got to be good now, right? And that's not the case, or it may not feel like that. So how can we kind of find that support in each other when we are struggling with some certain parts of our curriculum? Okay, so speaking of podcasts, Jonathan, thank you for that rundown. Nick, can you tell us a little bit about your recent episode of kind of highlighting those needs of our kindergarten artists?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I do want to say Jonathan's podcast is amazing, and he and I have the same philosophy of bringing experts in.
Yes.
Because everybody here right now have really good ideas. So we love hearing about them and then sharing them. And that's kind of what the podcast that I did about revolving around this is kind of about. It's more about the background, how that conversation went when we were thinking about this year and we were all like, do you know what this is going to look like?
Uh-huh.
And we were nervous. And then we decided, no, wait, stop. We need to change our mindset. And how are we going to do that? Changing our mindset is going to start with the language that we use. Instead of using, well, I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but instead of using the word gap, our learning gap, what other words are we going to use? What are the alternatives? And so we came up with some. So the podcast that I did kind of gives the team that was together, and Sarah was one and Lindsay was there, amongst others who we were just trying to figure out what are the skills that might be missing. And so that is kind of introducing the amazing YouTube resource that Lindsay is going to share with us.
All right, perfect.
Nice transition.
So, yeah, I know. Let's oh my gosh, you guys are making this so easy to host. So yes, that brings me to Lindsay. So we're all creating content in these many, many places. So wherever you like to listen or however you like to listen, hopefully you're able to find something that's helpful so you don't feel so lost and alone in the world of like 5-year-old kindergarten art that's up to your face and it's just terrifying. But knowing that you're supported, right? Because that's what this is all about. So we created, with the help of Lindsay Moss, who's an amazing art educator. She's done many pro packs. She's on lots of podcasts. She's also incredibly talented. And she was the host of our mini series for 123 ART. So Lindsay McGinnis, could you just give us some of the like episode titles? Tell us a little bit about what that YouTube series is all about.
Sure. So the series is called 123 ART. And as Sarah said, it is hosted by Lindsay Moss, the other Lindsay M. And she couldn't be here, so I'm her replacement. Same name. And it is a 7-episode series, and she goes through like different topics for each episode. So like the first episode is how to write names. So kindergartners are coming to school this year, and they don't know how to write their names because they've only been typing it on a computer. And so how are they going to write their name on their artwork to start class? So she starts off there, and she gives 3 tips. I want to make sure I get my numbers right. 3 tips for writing student names very easily to get the year started. And as the series goes on, she gives other tips. There's a whole episode on pincher grasp. There's one on how to paint with little kids, how to use glue with little kids, how to teach using scissors. So lots of really valuable skills just to get them going before starting any more finished art projects.
I love it. I love it. And there's a lot of content there too. They're all pretty short, so you can watch the content pretty quickly, so you can learn just some really easy peasy tips. But I love that the first one was about writing names. Now, question in the chat was, what's the name of this series? It's called 123 ART, and you can find it on the Art of Education YouTube channel. So if you will link to it here. So after the chat, I'll be linking to all of the podcasts, all of the where you can find the YouTube episodes, so you can watch all of what we're talking about and kind of take in all of that important information. But I think it's nice just to start kind of simple, because I don't know about like Jonathan and Nick in your classroom. We do a class code. So each class has like KH or KS or 1M or whatever. And when you're 5 years old and you're like, why am I writing like a 2L on my paper and I don't understand? Like all of these little things become very confusing to a tiny child. So I love like Lindsay's tips about, maybe just doing a quick sticker of a name for the first few weeks and not having to stress about whose artwork is this, right? And that way you know there's something on it. Or this last week I just wrote all my kiddos' names in pencil and did that. I know it took up my time, but it was like 2 minutes. And then I had them trace them and the class code at the beginning. So we did a little bit of tracing work, but that just kind of builds that muscle memory of putting their names on their paper. So if anyone else has any questions about what specific things you're really struggling with your youngest artist, we'd love to help you, but a lot of it is answered on the YouTube series too. So that brings me to perfect transition. Nick Hahn, I would love to hear about how you are painting with your youngest artist, because you were just talking about that too. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in your classroom?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Lindsay Moss brought this up in the YouTube series as well. And it was like such a classic. That's what I keep saying. What's old is new. So in my case, I'm now new again because I've been doing it. So that makes me new. But painting on paper is just with water is something that I've done for years. And it was just the perfect reminder. Watching that video again was like, that's right. She too is a very experienced art teacher who has all these tips. So bringing out the water again, and we do this whole thing where we talk to Mr. Brush. So we say, hello, Mr. Brush. Nice to meet you, Mr. Brush. You sure have some nice hair. And we're talking to the brush. They're echoing me in the class. And then we talk about, I do a lot of sensory with my kindergarten, well, with all students, but with my kindergarten specifically. So we're even like brushing on the back of our hand or on our wrist. And you should just see this heightened because they're so excited to have Mr. Brush. And now they're This feels awesome. It just brings it down back to the calm. And even as far as how to get water, so turning on the water in two different ways, turning on the faucet so it's full blast, and then turning it on quietly. Which one sounds better, the first one or the second one? Show me with your hand. And then they all go get their water. They immediately do this, right? So I let them, because it's water. Who cares?
Yeah.
And then we say, okay, look at this. We want to dip and wipe. Dip and wipe. Let's try it. Oh, I can't hear anything anymore. You're doing it right. And the kindergartners are just dipping and wiping. Like, that's how far I'm breaking each step down. So this painting paper lasted the entire hour. And I did this with kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, because guess what? Not just our littles that need that reminder. We have to meet them in the moment, meet them where they're at.
I mean, I absolutely love that. I'm going to be starting some painting with kindergartners next, and I do definitely want to do an entire day of painting with water and like talking to our brush. And I'm even seeing like some SEL connection too, about like showing compassion towards our materials and like making a connection with our little friend. Maybe we can name them ourselves. I don't know, right? It's like it's so important that they see that there is a need to be respectful to the art materials, right? So, Nick, I was also curious, especially since selfishly I want to know too how you did it. But what were the kids painting when they were painting with water? Did you suggest lines? Did you just let them go for it? What did that look like?
So we used recycled, like old, gross construction paper. So you need something that has pigment to it. That works really well. And I handed it out. You get what you get. Don't have you already know that one. Your teacher has been saying that all week. Got it. Okay. You don't have a fit. So we hand that out, and legit, I'm letting them just create a picture. What are you going to create? How is this going to look? What's going to be on here? Wait, I get to do anything? They are amazed. And then there was a lot of discovery and discussion afterwards. So we talked about like, wait, where's the water going? Oh, you think it's soaking into the paper? You think it's evaporating? I mean, we even had a discussion if this evaporates, is there going to be a storm in our classroom? Well, I suppose they go under the table if there is. It was fun to have this discovery. They picked up the paper, put it up to the window, and it shined through. So they had discovery within this lesson that was really about management.
I love that. I love that too. And I think it's important to kind of like balance how much technique and rules and like more structured things are we doing compared to like a free time. So the structure maybe is like doing the time where we're talking to our brush, seeing how it works with the water, learning how to wipe, right? All of those things that are kind of like techniques for the actual painting part. And then the part where we get to work with water, it's more free, right? So you get to just go for it without having to be concerned that it's like, okay, well now I have to do a line and now I'm doing this. So I love that you kept that open too, Nick. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it looks like a couple, Abby Shukai is up in here saying 8th graders need this, and like, like don't be afraid to paint water, like water on paper with your older kiddos, because, or maybe it's like a cool race. I don't know. You get 2 minutes and you have to, like those Buddha boards, where the like thing disappears. I love that. So it sounds like the water painting was just to make a mark and practice, and then let those papers dry and the next class would use them. Correct?
Yep. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It would dry fast enough that it would be ready for another group.
I don't have like those classes one right after another. You don't? So there were 50. No, I do, but like not that age level, right? Oh no.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on a card. I'm on for half the day. I'm doing the thing. Don't worry.
Oh, trust me. I know, Nick. I was not questioning your schedule. I'm just laughing at my Friday schedule where I have literally 3 kindergartners in a row, kindergarten classes in a row with no breaks, and I'm just like,
right. And in that
sorry.
regard, I would probably have 3 sets of paper.
Yes.
And
okay.
Pull it for next, and we're talking, I mean, they put it on the drying rack to practice that, and even though this isn't going to be a keepsake, we're still practicing the management. But yeah, I would do a day of letting it dry before I gave it to the next class.
Perfect. I love it. Okay, so if y'all think of any other questions regarding that painting, pop them in the chat and we will talk more about that too. So, Jonathan, I want to move to you a little bit because we were talking about the, kind of showing compassion for our art materials. I'm curious what you start with your youngest kiddos in regards to like that social emotional learning. Where do you put your energy? What does your classroom management look like so that you can treat your kiddos like whole children when they're maybe a little nervous or they're not familiar with the rules of the art room? Tell us just a few of the SEL approaches that you tend to put into your classroom teaching.
Yeah, and I think Nick really hit onto something that I'm trying to focus on this year is time. Like, I feel like, and I was with my art department today for some meetings, and we are talking about time and how we're all rushing. But why are we rushing? Like, what are we rushing towards? Like, the next thing, which goes to the next thing, which goes to the next thing, which goes to the next thing, right? So instead, like, we need to just realize it's okay. And it's meaningful to take the time to do the water painting. It's meaningful to take the time to talk to kids about, at all levels, about the management of our room, taking care of supplies, because in the end, it all pays off. And like, sure, maybe you didn't fit in that one day art experience by the end of the year, but maybe you do. So I think that's something that I'm really trying to work on this year is time and to just let it be, right?
And like
maybe
asking yourself, Jonathan, is like, who's putting that pressure on you? Like, who's making you put a time limit in there, right? It's like even the yeah, it's always us, almost always, right? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to what we need to get to. And right now, what we need to get to is preparing them for success. I mean, and making sure that they feel comfortable in this space. And some of the ways we do that, segue, is at our school, we talk a lot about awareness and respect. Awareness, respect, empathy, and perseverance. Those are our 4 core words. And what I do is I start off the school year by talking about what that looks like in this space. Because they're going to talk about what it means in the cafeteria, what it means out at the playground, what it means in their classroom. But like in here, we can respect one another. We can respect the environment in here. We can respect our supplies. Pet it like a puppy is how we do water on the edge, right? So instead of like, right, we say pet it like a puppy. So yeah, right, there it is. So even things like that, that is a part of them learning the management to take care of the things that are around them and to help them be successful with the kids that are next to them, that they're sharing space, that they're sharing art supplies. I did something a little different this year based off of an interview on my podcast that then turned into an article on the seeds of hope. So I started every kid in my school from K through 5, we talked about what are their worries and what are their hopes. And so, am I okay? Am I still here? Yeah. Okay. So we talked about what are their worries and what are their hopes. And even kindergartners did that. They sat and drew out what one of their worries is. And we talked about like a worry is something that we're upset about that may never happen, right? And then what are their hopes? Mm-hmm. What do they want to take place? What do they want to happen? So even having kindergartners do that, because they do have worries. Some of their worries are very different than what our worries are, but they're legit, right? Yeah. And having them put marker to paper and to draw out those worries and hopes, it helps them identify them. It helps them process them. And in many ways, it helps us discuss those worries and hopes as well. So I know that that's more of a bigger project. You could look it up. It's called the Seeds of Hope. But it's a continuing one. Our seeds are beginning to turn into something here at school. They're sprouting, AKA a pool noodle. And in the end, they're going to turn into a tree of gratitude that we're all going to add leaves of gratitude to as well. So like, what are we grateful for as well? But those are things that we need to talk through with kindergartners, first graders, and even ourselves. And I think that's part of it is we can't come into this work with kindergarten with assumptions, because each one of them is their own unique little human with their own context, with their own family, with their own experiences. I might have the assumption that most of my kids don't know how to write their name, and then I look around and they've got the most beautiful penmanship because maybe that's what they've been working on.
Yeah.
Interesting surprise for one class. So yeah, right. So going into this work with them, not with assumptions, but like learning about who they are as people as well. One of the things that I do for lining up at the door is there's so many. We have 715-ish kids in this school, and getting them lined up at the door. I'm still working on names still. Even the kids that I know well, I forget names. So lining them up at the door, we all want to hear our name. We all want to hear our name. And a great way for me to keep remembering what they are is I line them up by their name. And it's a great way for me to be like, ooh, what's it start with again? What letter does it start with? And they have fun with me. They enjoy that process of getting lined up at the door. So it does take a little bit longer, but I'm also cleaning while lining them up.
Of course you are. You can't just do one thing. But I love that, Jonathan, too. And I feel like, honestly, I just wrote down we want to hear our name because acknowledging students, I mean, think of how many times you have a class and there's a kid that just came in, worked quietly, did their thing, they pieced out, and you never talked to them, right?
Right.
And that's fine because they did their work, but that connection is lost a bit, right? So I think just being intentional about like making sure you say that kid's name, you're welcoming them in or goodbye or whatever it might be, is going to help build that connection with those little ones too.
Something just for a grander scheme of K through 12 life. Start with Hello Week. If you don't know about Start with Hello Week, you can research it. It was started by the Sandy Hook Promise from families from Sandy Hook. And we acknowledge it here at our school. And the whole idea is like starting with hello, including other people. And so tomorrow, every human in our school is going to be wearing a hello, my name is name tag, so that when we see each other in the hallways, regardless of who you are, you're saying the person's name. And so fifth grade teachers are going to be able to say that to kindergartners, or you may be able to say that to third graders. It's a really special thing. And Start with Hello Week, there's curriculums, there's all kinds of materials for any age level, because there's different levels in which you could reach that. But check it out.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing too. And just encouraging our kids that is an act of kindness, right? Sometimes it's like they just get nervous to talk to someone or nervous to know, just say like, what's your name isn't a bad thing to say, modeling that for them too. So thank you for reminding us of that as well. Yeah. Here in the chat that I just want to make sure I don't miss. The first one is tips for really short classes. Now, I also wanted to back up really quick and give a disclaimer because we all are in very different situations, which admittedly, I feel like is part of the reason why it feels more difficult this year is because, maybe last year we were all kind of coming into it and many of us were similarly virtual or hybrid or whatever it might be. We're kind of like feeling this similar experience. And now it's similar, but like the tree roots are kind of like going all over the place, right? So I can say, oh, Nick, so half your school is this and this is this. There's more variety. So it's harder to pinpoint what the needs of our students because there's just so much change, okay, and difference between our schools. So I just wanted to put a quick disclaimer in and say, check in with your classroom teachers, check in with your administration, see where your kiddos are at. And maybe it's a matter of, okay, we can just skip names, we can skip cutting, we got it all figured out, and we're good to just go into painting right away. And here's what I'm gonna pay attention to, right? So really, a pre-assessment, or just like Nick and I were chatting about the fact that maybe you need to just do like a real quick check-in, like what does it look like when our kids cut? Okay, now I know where we're at. Or like Jonathan said, all right, everybody had this perfect handwriting in my kindergarten class, cool beans, then I can just move on, right? Like brag much, but
one class, one.
I'm just kidding.
1 of 6.
But so sometimes that pre-assessment can be really helpful to see where your kiddos are at instead of just diving in and then maybe wasting a class here or there. So keep that in mind as well. I think I missed part of where I was going with that, but I did want to move. So just
short hours. So
yes, short hours. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. It's like a full day of teaching and then being on still. So can you tell me what you would do for those short classes? I have my kindergarten for 30 minutes twice a week, and all of my other classes are an hour. So let's start with maybe, or any of you, I guess, Nick, Jonathan, Lindsay, if you saw anything on the YouTube or know from some stuff that Lindsay Moss had said. What do we do for those short classes?
Yeah, you're probably going to have a really good experience or a really good conversation on this, because I do have the hour classes.
Okay.
But in my hour classes, I probably do 6 lessons. So little thing is an individual lesson to get them moving, to have them move around the room, because their attention span is, roughly 10 minutes. So here's a good example of the project I will be doing next with my kindergartners, and it's working on 4 different mediums. So we have markers up here, we have colored pencils, paint, or maybe colored pencils and crayons, one of the two. And we're making a pumpkin patch here, but again, we're not worried about the end result. We're talking about the usage of each of these materials, where they're located in the room, how to get them, how to bring them back. So each of these sections might be an individual hour. We're going to work on markers today, and this is what it's going to look like. And now with your extra time today, you can use the markers. The marker drawer is open. Now you've learned it. This is a little bit more like what a choice-based teacher would do, opening up the different sections of their room. So that's one idea of just like thinking. I already think of my class in 6 different little lessons. So I would recommend this, a half hour, 25 minutes, whatever it is, to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
Lindsay spoke on something similar in the last episode of the YouTube series. So episode 7 with the Q&A, someone had asked about like time periods and how do you like make it through a whole period without them like falling apart.
Oh, that was so dramatic, you guys.
Yeah. What?
5 to 10 minute attention span. Okay. So like plan a lot of little activities, and keep it moving, and don't stop or have downtime. But there are more tips in that last episode 7.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Lindsay. So you were just saying like keep it moving, keep there, lots of activity, lots of kind of like structured sort of things that are going on, so that it can be very defined what's happening. Yes, Jonathan, go.
Okay, what I was going to say is, I think in most cases, when I'm trying something for the first time, I always over-plan as if we're going to get to a ton of things. So that then, when we only get to this, I was prepared to keep going, but I know that I'm going to see them again. And then we'll get to this, and then we'll get to this. But if I've thought through and I have everything prepared, I've thought through the questions I'm going to ask, the stories I'm going to read, the materials we're going to use, then they're ready. So that if something, like I do have the benefit of having 50 minutes with kindergarten, but at one point I had 35. And I knew that if I was planned for a whole time, each class is also going to be quite unique. So like one class might fly through something, whereas another one, it might take us the whole time to write our beautifully penmanshiped names. Right. So.
Right. Yes. Yes. So I think sometimes over planning can be helpful. I love that. And plus you'll be using that throughout the project at some point, right? So it just means during one class, how far did you get? And I think something that helps me is, it might seem silly, but just to do less. So with my students, for example, today, we were doing, my kindergartners, I saw them for half an hour. They came in, they started at the carpet. We started with our mantra, which is like our positive self-affirmation. It makes us ready for art. We did a little motivation, and then we drew some lines in the air. So we got our like drawing fingers out and we drew this way, and then we reverse it and we use our other arm to make it really strong, and then we like follow Mrs. K. We do some like movement stuff to kind of get our lines in the air and kind of get crazy. The kids will give examples, and it's just a fun way to get us moving, right? So that's the beginning part, is just starting at the carpet. And then I'll demonstrate what we're doing for the day around a big table. And if we have a couple little rules, like if you have to touch the table, it's thumbs or nothing. And they all know thumbs or nothing, so that we don't lean over the table. We're not like flopping, right? But it's thumbs or nothing. And then it's like, that's what the rule is. So they will meet around the table. I'll quick demonstrate for them. We'll do a lot of call and response. So they respond with what the directions are. You know, I'll just like start something and then they'll say the same thing back so they know what the directions are for the day. And today we literally, the kids traced their name and their class code on the back of their paper, and then they made 5 bold, unique lines on their paper, and that was it. And I taught them how to tuck their paper into their colored folder that matches their table color. I taught them, remind them about how to tuck your chair into your chair square, meet at the carpet. I mean, it's so important in my eyes to go slower and not feel that rush with a group of 20-something 5-year-olds, and to like read a story at the end or maybe have a conversation or even do some breathing or whatever, right? Than to feel like I'm pushing and getting so much into a class when, like, let's ask that question, who's telling me I have to do that much in a class? Like myself, you know what I mean? So doing a little less is okay if it means that we're kind of building those skills. So that's how I take care of those shorter classes. Okay, so let's keep going here. I have, let's see, we were talking a little bit about the language. And then Nick, I wanted to bring it back to you about how important it is for us as teachers with how we talk to our students, but even just to each other as educators about our language use. So can you tell us about some other options for learning gap, or where else you're seeing us needing to be mindful about how we speak?
Sure, I'll get started and then throw it over to Lindsay because she'll have a little bit of insight as well, just because she was there in this conversation. Sure. And I remember we started this conversation and we were all like little angry trolls. Like we were like, oh, this is, and it just, we had to change ourselves. So it took, and I think this is why we need each other, why we need a community of art educators. We had to sit around and go, wait. Is it their fault? Are they really behind? Have they had advantages of everybody else? How can we, if we tell them, you know, the minute that they walk in, we have to catch you up. You're behind. Like, what kind of a message are we sending to the students that we're going to be working with? So I went for a run one of the days that we were gathering as a group, and the whole time I'm going, okay, what's the word? What's the word that we're going to use? I came back and I said, how about moment? And I think we all like sat on that for a little bit and just kind of, I think Lindsay Moss brought it to other, you know, other words as well. And Lindsay McGinnis, I mean, we just all kind of had these ideas of like learning moment. It's not behind or even ahead. It's just where we're at right now. Lindsay, what was some of the things that you saw on, or you heard Lindsay Moss saying in the YouTube series that was kind of related to that?
All along what you were saying, like learning moments or learning opportunities, because it's not their fault. It's just the way things are. Yep. It's no one's fault, you know? And we don't want students to feel like it's their fault or that they're behind because of something they did. It's just the way things are. And to look at it as a learning gap, like we do use that language in the articles and in like the descriptions of the YouTube videos, but that's just so it's searchable content. But when we're talking about it more in the articles and in the videos, we try to use words like moments or learning opportunities, because we want, like, it's just more of an opportunity for these students to grow and learn more things.
And I'll add to that and say it's more of an opportunity for us to grow and learn.
Very true. We
have to break it down to a preschool level. We're going to be better because we've done it, because we broke it down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think because it really does benefit everyone to just take a second, take a beat, and realize this is, you know, how we would teach anyways, but maybe just take it even more broken down. I mean, like, if you've ever taught a kid to use a paper clip, like, we know how to like break things down. Like, tell me y'all have taught a kid how to use a paper clip, because this is something that happens every year. I'm like, 2 bumps to the paper, 1 over. It's like a whole thing. But like, that's what I'm saying, is make it simple, make it easy to understand, and like demonstrate the stuff that you already know, but that they definitely do not. So I think that's a great reminder. And also just we don't need any more negativity in our life, so why not try to make the narrative as positive as possible, and again, not putting that stress on our students too, because like Lindsay was saying, it's not their fault. This is where we are, so why not just be where we are, right? Okay, so I also wanted to talk about just any little hints or hacks or things that we have noticed within our classroom, and also give everybody that's in the chat today another chance to drop any questions in. So if you're thinking about maybe something you're really struggling with those younger students, maybe something that you saw or question or how to talk to kids, go ahead and just put a question or a comment in the chat for us so that we can try our best to help you out with that. But I'm going to open it up to the three of you about any like hints or hacks that you're like, I just really want to share. This helps with my youngest kiddos. Jonathan, I see you ready.
I'm ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this before, right? I have to take little notes about what I want to say, or else it flies out of my head and I'll never remember. So I've been like, okay. So one of the things that whenever you're talking about like painting with water, and then the transition then into using, typically next it's like watercolors, right? Typically. So what I always do is I always say like, okay, how do we use these? And I let the students talk me through it, but of course I take them literally, just like they would take me literally. So like they say, put the water in the watercolor, and I take and put the water right on top of the watercolor. They're like, no! And then I start to spill it in. They're like, no! And then finally they're like, no, put the brush in. So I put it upside down. And so it's comical. They also probably think that I'm a fool, and why am I teaching art and they're not, right? But like, it's this simple way that gets them to realize like already I'm learning who's had experiences with watercolors before, who can help lead the class through this experience, and they'll never forget it, right? Like they'll never forget that time. And it's something that I continue to do through first grade, because like, again, I'll be like, now how do I use this tempera paint, right? And so having them talk me through it has really helped. One of the other things is in my classroom, I'm not sure if you can still see, but I have the plastic dividers up for several reasons. But we last year called them our studios. Each kid had their own studio space. So it's about language, right?
Yes.
Instead of calling them a barrier, instead of, talking to them about, personal protective equipment, right? Like I talk to them about their own studio and how we take care of our studios. These are ours for this time. We don't draw all over the walls. Like we clean up after them. And I found this book called Studio, A Place for Art to Start. And so in kindergarten, I read this to them this year as a way to like prompt, like what is a studio? How do we take care of a studio? And that really helps. Of course, in the middle of it, they were like, are we going to make something now?
Of course.
So,
of course.
But it's also training them to know what art class is. It's not always about just coming in and immediately getting to work. It's about learning about art, appreciating it, discovering technique. So those are the things I was thinking that I wanted to share.
I love it. Thank you for those hints. Super helpful. I was also trying to take notes at the same time, so I'll come back to mine. I'm curious, Nick or Lindsay, do you have any specific hacks or hints that you're finding helpful for the youngest ones?
Lindsay, do you want to speak?
Sure, I'll go. So I just want to say, Jonathan, like how you have the students like tell you what to do and then you literally do it. That's a lot of fun. And like you said, it's very memorable. And that's something that I still do with like high school students. So transcends all grades and ages. It's very effective. It also gets them to work on their verbal skills and be able to explain things and describe things accurately. So that's helpful also. But there are a lot of great tips and like hacks in the video series. I don't want to give them all away if you haven't seen them, but one of my favorite ones was for scissors. And I think it's one of my favorite ones because Lindsay Moss was in it, like flapping her arms like a chicken. And so that's very memorable. But like if you ever had like little kids with scissors, their arms are like flapping around like a chicken to get them to stay in their space and to use their arms appropriately. She has them grab a piece of paper and then put it under their arms so that if they lift their arms, the paper falls to the floor. So I thought that was really clever. So they have to keep the paper under their chicken wings and then cut so that their arms aren't flapping all over the place.
I love that.
So
And
that's a fun visual. Yeah.
yeah, oh yes. Anytime they can like be extra silly, but they're still learning things and practicing, that's like double win, right? It's so good.
And something that I don't think I mentioned before is in the video series, there are children, there are kindergartners in the video. So you can actually see them practicing these skills, and you can see Lindsay teaching these skills. So that's another valuable thing about the YouTube series.
I love it.
Can I add on? So let's just talk. Lindsay Moss is amazing. She has lots of great knowledge. We worked as a team to really develop this. But I will say, Lindsay McGinnis here has done a phenomenal. These are gorgeous videos. Like you're just gonna. They're so wonderful. You're gonna love them. So if you haven't jumped in and seen them, please do, because like they're amazing. Great. Okay, I have a few.
I agree. Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm on a cart, as I mentioned, sometimes because we're over capacity. Another art teacher comes in. She uses MySpace. I have a relationship with the teachers in the classroom. So I'm buzzing to their classroom so that we have this relationship. It'll be easier, was the thought. It is. It's great. So I have made 2 of these, and this is in, Lindsay, can you help me? Has this article been posted yet?
No, but it's coming out in October.
Okay, so in October, teachers versus students, this is something that I refer to. I hold this up. I use non-visual constantly. So on the first day, we are talking about, what do you think this eye means? Oh yeah, it does mean your eyes on the teacher. How about this mouth? Yep, quiet mouth. Hands, raising your hand, or hands to yourself, both correct, and calm body. Do you have crisscross? No, you don't, but you have to have a calm body. So then I place this away, and as I bring them back to the carpet, or all of a sudden people are starting to wiggle or talk to their neighbor, all I have to do is go like this. And their little bodies straighten up. They do the things as I press to them. And it's just nonverbal. It's just this really safe way. I'm not calling anyone out. We're just looking at this. Another thing that I do is this is for later in the year, or for our older students. So I have a lot of nonverbals for my board too. These are on magnets. So I have a need. What do you need? What are you going to do? Where are you going to put it? So I have a put, and then what are you going to do then? These magnets make it very easy, especially our non-readers yet, to know what to get, what to do, how to do it. Doing drawings, also having examples and non-examples. So again, this is about cutting. What makes this better than this one, or vice versa? Which one do we think? And then giving them things to. We talked about calm bodies. So if you're waiting for some students to make their way to the carpet, giving them something that they can do. This is called backtrace, and you're the kids to sit, well, depending on what your rules are, we all have different rules right now, right? So maybe this is for the future. Maybe you can do this today. Having 2 students sitting by each other, and a student traces on someone's back a shape, and this student is going to guess it, and then they'll that on my then, or wherever on my board, as an example of what they could be doing, so that they have a focus. They know what to do. They're not wrestling around. Have you had a kindergartner wrestling around on the carpet? Probably not. That must just be
Never. No, that never happens.
I thought
Yes,
of something super practical that I forgot to do this year, and I'm kind of regretting it, and I'm going to start it again tomorrow. Normally, I start the year with kindergarten on their very first day of art, of taking them on a tour of how to get to the bathroom and then how to come back. And I always take the whole class, and we go and we see where it is. We talk about, like, this year we have to hang passes up on hooks, and we talk through the process, and then 2 different ways to get back to the art room because there's 2 doors. So, and I forgot this year. And there'd be times where like 10 minutes later, I'd be like, where is that kid? But I can't leave all of you. I mean, the school's a circle. You'll come back eventually. One came back with an ice pack. I was like, what happened? How did you get to the nurse that's nowhere near here? So I know that I have to hit stop, right? And even though I've got other things planned, I know I'm going to need to go on a tour. So as their tour guide, I will be showing them the nearest bathroom tomorrow.
That is genius. I love it. I also I usually do that too, but I've been finding myself being like, okay, like sneaking out to the hall and trying to show them, but like meanwhile there's chaos or like semi chaos in the room, right? So I agree. Just take them all, show them what it looks like. That's why it's the do less thing. Today is bathroom visit and writing our names on our paper. Like, it's fine. It's
a little tour guide outfit too, and you're like,
oh yeah,
right, you'll see. I mean, you can make that real fun.
Oh yeah, no,
that's a great idea.
But you're also afraid that all of a sudden everyone's going to need to go to the bathroom to play the bathroom game, right? Because it's contagious.
Better than an accident, though.
Exactly.
It's true.
Okay, go. Sure, go. Just come back eventually.
Right? The world of kindergarten, we definitely know what this world is. A couple of quick things too that I'm noticing in the chat, I don't want to forget because we're kind of close to wrapping up our time here, is I know one of our amazing writers, Janet, was reminding us about some of the resources that you can find in today's article about de-escalating kiddos with big feelings, whether it's younger students or a lot of those techniques can be used with our upper students as well. Let's see. I'm seeing a question here. What if your students can't write over their name when you have them trace it? And the answer is that's okay, because it's already written on there and it's just practice for them. So then I personally would take note, like, okay, these 3 kiddos in my class, I never can read what they write. So as they write, I'll let them like do their name on the back. And then I'll maybe come over and do like hey, do you mind if I put a tiny baby name in the corner so that I know, but still allowing them to have the ownership over the back of their name too. And then seeing Abby Shukai answered the question about where we can find those. The YouTube series is on the Art of Ed YouTube channel. 123 ART is our kindergarten series, and there'll be many more amazing series to come covering many other amazing topics. But I also wanted to do real quick, I have a few hints from my classroom as well, and then we're going to end with each of us just sharing something that we are excited about moving forward, a word of encouragement, some sort of word of affirmation, since we know that this still feels hard, but we can do it. So a couple things that I wrote down were about language being important. The first one kind of mimics Jonathan asking for students to like tell what they, what it looks like to paint. And I always say to my students, teach me what I need to do. So I like giving them the power to say, like, who can be my teacher and teach me what I need to do here? Because then it kind of makes them feel like they're a little more in charge than if they're just saying it. I also typically do something called a master artist or a master helper. And that works really well in the kindergarten classroom, which of course you have to be mindful of what your classroom rules are if kiddos can be close to each other. But if it's a project or a step where there's a kid that just might be a little bit slower and they want help, I'll teach them how a friend can be a compassionate master helper and help them with the job as long as the person whose paper it is still the owner, right? So let's say we're like, cutting collage paper, right? And 20 of the 24 kids are done, but maybe there's a couple kids that just really want to be helpers. So I'll say, you can be a master artist for so-and-so, but you always have to go ask them first, do you want a master helper? They have the right to say no, or they can say yes, but then they're in charge of what color you use, what you paint with. It's still their artwork, but you're kind of their assistant, right? So that can be helpful for those kiddos that just take a bit longer and need like a master helper. And then it's kind of encouraging that compassion and empathy as well. I also wanted to just mention, ironically, because I'm totally not breathing right now, but how often I have students take breaths in my classroom. Like so often. I'm like, all right, Mrs. K says hands on belly, relax your shoulders, and take a deep breath. And I'll remind them about how belly breathing is the best way. I shouldn't see your shoulders go up and down. I shouldn't hear you make a silly noise, right? But how your breath can refocus yourself. So in any given class, we probably take like 5 deep breaths. The earrings, Abby, thanks for distracting me. I'm like, squirrel. There are 2, I believe they're a married couple, 2 art educators that are amazing, and they did like acrylic earrings. They're from At the Hobo Toes. So if you like supporting other art teachers, At the Hobo Toes. Anyways, the last thing I wanted to say was using the word helper hands, because when we're doing things like scissors, right? Lindsay talked about how like the chicken wing gets fixed on this side, but then kids will like have a dead arm on this and they just like want to cut with one arm, right? But like we need the helper hand. So I always say like you need to hold the paper with your helper hand. So it's a 2-handed thing whenever we're doing something. And I like that context of helper hand. Those were my hints.
You lost me. I'm done. Like,
you know what I mean though? Like they're just like expecting you to come and hold the paper for them. I'm like, no, you have to help yourself, sweet friend. I believe in you. Oh, this is too funny. Okay, so on that note, can we all end with just a little word of encouragement, a word of affirmation, some little snippet of positivity as we move forward? And then during that, if you want to just mention your Instagram handle quick, and just to refresh everybody, I will be linking up to our podcast episodes, the YouTube series, things like that in the story. You just have to give me like an hour-ish after this to get it all in there. So give me just a second. Jonathan, why don't you start?
yeah, and I think that my note to go with is that yes, our kids are in a moment, whether they realize it or not, but so are we. And so the important thing to focus on as you're talking about breathing is our own self-regulation and our own self-management. So there is a podcast episode of The Art of SEL on self-management, and there's also an article on self-regulation that I wrote as well. But it's important that we have these steps that aren't about self-care. It's not about like going out necessarily for coffee or like, you know, going shopping after school, but it's in the moment when we're frustrated, when we're feeling elevated. Do we have those strategies to take a step aside, maybe stare at the wall for a second, maybe do some counting, do your breathing techniques, go and help another student, right? But there's lots of things that we need to do for ourselves in the moment to make sure that we and the students are successful as well. Because yeah, kindergarten is delightfully challenging. And we have to recognize that and how that impacts us too.
Yeah, that's a perfect description. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate those words of encouragement for us. Nick, would you like to go next?
Sure. I first want to talk about my earrings that come from Miss Sarah Krayaski. So if you do enjoy supporting our teachers, I would recommend that.
Thanks. Oh, it's been so long since I've made earrings, but we'll get there again.
But look at that. Oh, they're so of just taking those breaths. But it's for me, and I've done podcasts on this because I'm such a believer in something called the catalyst approach. So the catalyst approach is a lot of nonverbal. That's where this was developed. It's a lot of having resources. That's where these are developed. And then also just taking that breath. So like when you're like hot, or you even had to like, first of all, if you do have to speak to your group as a whole, and you have to like have a, come on guys, let's get to it. I have a completely different spot in my room that I do that in.
Ooh.
I don't want to contaminate where they do their learning and their loving of art. So I go to this spot, and sometimes my older kids are like, going to the spot again. But the younger one, and then I go back up to my teaching spot. I look down, I look up, and it's like I had amnesia. You smile at those kids, even if it's in a mask. You smile at those kids, and you start again. It resets not only the classroom again, but it resets you. You look down and you look up. And it starts that whole process for yourself and for the students. So taking that like breath, taking a step to the side, looking down, giving them the smile, and you'll feel a smile too.
Thank you, Nick. That's it. That's a beautiful way to think of it too, is because sometimes we can feel ourselves getting overwhelmed, by that chaos of that class, and sort of taking on that challenge and proving to yourselves that it is okay and you can manage it and kind of just start again, right? You can always just begin again many, many, many times. Yes, many times. Lindsay, do you have something for us today?
Sure. I just want to remind all of you who teach kindergarten and are struggling right now that you are these kids' first opportunity to learn art. You're the first face that is going to teach them art, and that is a huge opportunity and it's a gift. And so just have fun. Like, they may be behind, quote unquote behind, we don't want to use that word, and they may not be like where you want them to be, but just have fun with where they are in the moment and enjoy it and get them to love and appreciate art.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And that's important too, because like we said during this chat, our kids don't know that they might be behind what we expect or what we see typically. They don't know. They're just like, yeah, paint. Let's do it, right? And they're so psyched about it. I love it. One thing that I wanted to share too was trying to give yourself a very attainable way to regulate yourself. So I was finding myself more burnt out than I had ever been at the end of last year, and didn't feel like the summer was enough time for me to heal, and still kind of like struggling to put a lot of energy towards, creating content and all these things. And it just feels like a lot. And so I said, okay, well, how can I regulate myself so that I don't feel as burnt out as I did in the past? And the things that I noticed that would help me with my mental health were what I'm calling M&M, ironically, which is meditate and move. So I do meditation at the end of every day. Haven't done it yet today, but I will. 10 minutes of just being still, because I find that like the first 4 minutes of it, I'm just like vibrating, right? I'm just like moving because I've just been moving all day. So that meditation, that quiet is incredibly, incredibly grounding for me. And then the move. And other days I might come home and like collapse on the floor, and a move is like me doing, a stretch, right? Or taking a walk. Other days it might be like an actual workout like I want to do, and that makes me feel good and boost my endorphins. So try to give yourself a goal that you know you can reach, so that you can kind of like manage, right? And also just, again, I know people say it all the time, but like literally just having self-compassion to say like, shoot, I didn't move today, and that's okay. And I'll just do it tomorrow, and it doesn't matter. And just acknowledge it and just move on, and it's going to be okay. So that's what I got for y'all. You three are rock stars. I'm going to end with our quick, take the compliment, Jonathan. I'm going to end with our quick trivia question for these lovely people that have waited through our beautifully long chat. We have a lot of fun things that we've been sharing. So I have the coolest sticker you've ever seen. And I would love for the first person to answer this question correctly in the chat. You can DM the Art of Ed, and then I will send you a really cool sticker. So the question is that our people need to answer in the chat is, what is the name of our kindergarten YouTube series? Drum roll.
Okay, what is the name of the series?
What is the name of the kindergarten YouTube series? Yes. Oh, did it cut out? That was dramatic. Okay, what is the name of our kindergarten YouTube series? I'll say it like 9 times because I'm teaching. Guys, we can do it. Probably. Somebody answer, please.
Sure.
Do you have a good hint? Ah, yay! KEG-T123. Ooh, that's convenient because your name is similar to that. Okay, the first one I got was CAGT123. You are the winner of our sticker, so if you want to message the Art of Ed, then I will send that to you. The rest of you, I will be sharing in our story after this, where you can find podcasts about SEL, Nick Hahn's podcast about supporting our kindergarten artists, and then all of the YouTube content, as well as a lot of the other fun things that we are sharing on our articles. So thank you three so much for joining me. This will be saved on IGTV, so you can watch it and share it as many times as you'd like. All right. Have a fabulous night, everyone. Okay? Bye, friends.